Hey, everybody, I'm Kat Margulis, and I'm the host of The Power of Story. And as a longtime journalist, book coach, and author, I see story everywhere I go. And in recent years, I've had the opportunity to see how story can transform lives and businesses. And that's what I want to explore with you and with my guests through this series so that you can create the life and the business and the legacy of your dreams. Today, I have with me Dr. Paul J. Zak. And Paul is a professor of economics, psychology, and management at Claremont Graduate University. He's a tech entrepreneur whose current company, Immersion Neuroscience, is a software platform that allows anyone to measure what the brain loves in real time to improve outcomes in entertainment, education, and training, advertising, and live events. Paul is also an author and regular TED speaker. His newest book, Immersion, The Science of the Extraordinary and Source of Happiness, is out now. Paul, it is so great to be chatting with you again.
And you too, Kat. Thank you.
Yeah. Gosh, I've got so many questions for you, but I since we last spoke, your new book has come out. And it couldn't be more topical. I'm seeing the word immersion all around and more than ever, it seems. What's the deal with immersion and why is it taking over?
That's a great question. I think, it's been certainly used in the VR space. So there's, part of that trend. We made up this word or stole this word or adopted this word to denote a neurologic state that my research had uncovered that occurs when we have an extraordinary experience. Right? So it allows us to reverse engineer that process. And that's really what the book is about, is if I know extraordinary in the brain, then I don't have to ask you about liking, or if liking predicted outcomes, we would just stop, right? We wouldn't have all the crappy movies and TV shows and bad ads and bad classrooms and all that kind of stuff. It just doesn't, because the source of this neurologic state I've called immersion is deep in the old parts of the brain that are outside of conscious awareness. So they're driven by the emotional connection to the experience.
Ooh, the emotional connection to experience. That's not traditionally what I would have associated with that word immersion. So that's it. That's fascinating. And how do you see immersion applied in the storytelling space, or how does storytelling impact immersion or vice versa?
There's a little story here. So we started, kind of finding these neurochemical and electrical signals that seem like they would predict what people would do. So when we worked to discover what extraordinary means, we didn't ask people. We didn't want to anchor our analysis in feeling states, which is just too fleeting. We had people do things that were difficult or costly, or, like email your congressperson about the environment or donate to charity. So we give you experience and then ask you to do something. And then over time, we kind of narrowed down all these many signals we looked at in the brain. And so one of the things we started doing was using public service announcements. And those are like ads or little stories, right? And what we found was that a narrative arc is the most effective way to keep people immersed in an experience and therefore influence their behavior among all of the other ways to present an experience. So it's like the scales fell from my eyes. I'm like, holy crap, story. This is, Aristotle figured this out 2,600 years ago, but yeah, I'm just figuring this out now. And the story kills. So to the extent that you can cast a class, that's hard to say, or a training or a shopping experience as a narrative, as a journey that people take with authentic emotions and characters who are facing a crisis or mystery, that will keep the brain engaged in that experience and gets us to care about the outcomes, which we might want to control or be part of. And so I think from a business perspective, that's why immersive experiences are so powerful. And story is the most effective way to keep people immersed. Not the only way, but it is just that narrative arc just keeps your brain going, holy crap, I got to watch this thing because it's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. And again, like my what I think of when I think of, I'm like, okay, so that means like lots of sounds and like that 3D movie experience. But again, we keep missing the point, almost like us at the end of the end of the user experience or whatever. And that, yeah, what I keep hearing again is that it's the narrative arc. that creates that
Can I
immersive
expand on
experience?
that a little bit? So I think
Yeah.
it's really three dimensions that are important to understand. One is the readiness of the person who's going to be engaged in that story, right? So I've got to be ready. So think about bringing down the lights in a theater, right? Turning off your phones. That prepares the stage for this, because being immersed in an experience is metabolically costly. And so if you are thinking about four other things and you're angry or hurried or hungry, you're just not going to devote the metabolic energy to have a great experience. So the popcorn's important in the theater, so is the lights, so is the sound a little louder than you would like. So all that is sucking you into the experience. So first is readiness. The second is the structure of the content, right? So we know that people have experimented with all kinds of weird content that does not follow that narrative arc.
Yeah.
Um, atonal music might be one of those. I mean, stuff that, some subset of people like, but most people kind of find not very valuable. And one of my favorite movies is Memento, right? Which is about this guy who gets a brain injury, because I'm a neuroscientist. And that's a narrative arc. It's just a narrative arc that runs backwards, right? So it still works, right?
Yes.
And the third is how we deliver it. So I could have a wonderful story, but if I speak in a monotone, you're just going to fall asleep. I mean, not literally. Your brain's going to
Yeah.
go, okay, this ain't interesting to me. There's no energy in this. There's no passion. There's so even if the story may be compelling, it's got to be delivered in the right way. So readiness, structure or content, and delivery. I think those are the three dimensions that are both measurable and generally can be improved to make the experience more valuable to the individual. And then lastly, this is so cool. When you have highly immersive experiences, they're tagged with emotion as important, and those are actually saved in the brain in a very particular way that makes them more easily recalled later on. So this is the foundation for seeing a movie or reading a book a second or third time, or going and staying at the Four Seasons because you had such a great time, you stayed there last time.
Mhm.
Whatever that is, it builds in customer loyalty.
Wow. That's really, really cool. Um, that's very cool. I kind of want to skip a step here, which is since we're already speaking about the content, is there any, I think you talked about an arc. Is there anything else, any other pieces that people should know about that piece in particular? And yeah, and how it should be structured, or like, yeah, I'm just curious if you guys found what kind of content works best.
Mhm. So,
Or
I mean, that's a very deep question. And so
yeah.
the immersion book is based on data from about 50,000 brain measurements we've done. So,
Wow.
um, from that, I'm able to derive kind of general principles that people can use. So, there's a couple things there. One is what I call relevance. So, if the narrative is relevant to me, then I actually will devote more brain power to it. So, we see a bigger part of the brain. So there's some newer part of the brain, the outer part called the cortex, will actually devote more energy to these emotional parts. They said, oh, this is super cool. So here's an example. I may create the best ad for Huggies diapers in the world and cute babies and outer music. But if I don't have infants at home, it's just going to be kind of like, oh, this is cute, this is nice, and then my brain flushes it out. If I
Yeah.
have infants at home and I'm buying diapers, so the term of art in neuroscience is top-down control. I have so much more like, oh, holy crap, this is important to me. So I've now said holy crap 3 times. So apparently it's my favorite word this morning. So right, that's really relevant to me. So the first is targeting that story to the audience, right?
Mm.
So and the second is that we like stories that are different but not too different.
Oh, I
So
love that.
you're a story theorist, and so there is a theory that there's only one story, right? There's just one
Yes.
universal story, and we could debate that, and we don't have to. But um, what the data show is that for songs, for customer experiences, we want a little surprise. For movies, for TV, but not too different, right? If I like, for my TV viewing, I tend to like kind of spy stories. I don't know why, but I like those. So I look for new ones, but I don't want them so weird that I'm just like, okay, this is not really a spy story. This is a love story or something else, right?
Mhm.
Built around a spy story.
Yeah.
So if I know what I kind of like, then give me some of that, but give me something new because I've seen a lot of spy stories now. I don't really need a new spy story. So
Yeah.
same thing, again, for a customer experience, a live experience, think of creating that narrative arc and put a little surprise in there, right? So from a merchandising perspective, from a sales perspective, I want to have that familiarity. So if you come into my store, hi, Kat, how nice to see you again. Gosh, it's great to have you back here. Hey, you know what? We have a couple new things I want to show you. Okay, now that's personalized. It's about you, so it's relevant. If I have a smart, merchandiser and I have a good, customer relationship management software, I know who you are. I know what you bought last time. I know your preferences. I should be able to customize something for you that's similar to what you probably like, but is new, right? That's the
Yeah.
best, as opposed to something like, um, you know, the 16-year-old girls are wearing these outfits. You're like, hey, not relevant to me, right? So.
Yes. Yeah. Um, Something that's been coming up for me lately personally and through some of these conversations, and I figure it's not even in my list of questions I was going to ask you today, but I figure if I'm going to dig into this with anybody, it gets to be you, is the subject of wonder. And I keep hearing like little things and whether you use the word surprise or unexpected, like it's this element of wonder when people open that up and what that creates for people on the receiving, on the experience end of things. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I feel like that surprise is a frequency of wonder kind of thing. You know what I mean? Um,
Right. So I think wonder would be a good surprise. So one
yeah.
of the neurochemical components of immersion is driven by a chemical your brain makes called dopamine, which is looking for the new things, looking for the
Oh,
surprise, right? And so if I'm building this narrative arc, but I have a little surprise, I get this little dopamine hit, and it keeps us attending to that experience. It says, "Oh, actually, this is new to me," right? If I've seen this experience 100 times, it's not that new. And so
yeah.
our brain just doesn't, put as much energy into it, even though we can watch movies and read books multiple times, hear songs. Um, the data look like, I mean, a good story is a good story is a good story, and it'll consistently be immersive. But if you take a great story or a good story and you add a little twist to it, now I have
Yes.
a reason to devote more neurologic energy. So again, I'm always thinking from the brain
Yeah.
perspective. I want to hack this system in the brain so that people have an amazing experience and want to renew it. And if it's the
Yeah.
same thing every time, then it's,
Yeah.
not
And I
worth it.
think because I was thinking about it in terms of travel too, like why is travel so special to me and my family? And it is that the unexpected, it's the surprise and it's the dopamine hit
Mhm.
and the being present. That's what I found is like being more present when you're in that state.
Again,
Yeah.
present requires metabolic energy, and your brain
Yes.
wants to idle. If it's not really cool, if it's not interesting or useful to me, I'm just going to idle and not be in immersion mode. So I'll give you a concrete
Yes.
example. I'm staying at a hotel in Las Vegas today to give a talk, and fall is coming up. And I noticed this morning when I went to get coffee that they're putting all the fall colors, the flowers out. I was thinking, that's really expensive. This is a giant hotel casino. Why would they do that? Oh, because they have regular visitors, and those visitors are going to expect something a little different. So it's the same building, but
Yes.
they're gonna kind of, if you will, merchandise it in a different way. They're going to create a different kind of atmosphere, so it feels a little different
Yeah.
coming in. It feels relevant because it's getting a little colder, right? So all that is really smart from a business perspective, and
Yeah.
to me, it is kind of retail storytelling, right? There
Yes,
is a
totally.
component in which we want you to feel like it's fall now in Las Vegas. Things are a little different. It's not quite as hot. We want you to feel like this is a place for you, but it's different than last time you came.
Yeah, I love that. Retail. I love that retail storytelling. Um, Last time we spoke, we were just beginning to talk about the power of feedback, and I'd love to touch on that with you today. What has your work in immersion neuroscience taught you about what the brain loves? And I know we kind of, addressed that today,
Mm.
but maybe just, yeah, we'll just dig into that for a moment.
That's the right word, love. So if we look at love, friendship, immersion in an experience in a story, there are very similar pathways in the brain. So we want people to love these experiences, if
Yeah.
possible. The problem is that we get the wrong kind of feedback, right? So how much do I love talking to you? I mean, compared to what, right? So it's not clear, it's not well anchored. And that requires some kind of technology. And so, we started years ago with blood draws, looking at changes in neurochemicals, and then now measure electrical activity. And so I think the difficulty for storytellers, for experienced designers, is that we're asking people if they like something, and liking and loving something are quite different. And I'm not even sure I don't think liking helps us, right?
Oh,
What I want to know is, does this literally blow your mind? Is this so amazing that you are just all in? Like, this is just crazy good. And so, that's harder to put down on a 1 to 7 scale. So
yeah.
what we developed is a technology that anybody can use to second by second measure how much love your brain is expressing for this experience. And then you can curate that experience. If you measure a bunch of those experiences, you go, okay, well, this thing works, this doesn't work. So let me give you a concrete example.
Yeah.
So one of the movie studios uses our platform to improve movie trailers, theatrical movie trailers, which are around usually 3 minutes. And the reason for that is that the distributors of movies get most of their revenue in the first 2 weeks of a movie being released. And so they need to get butts and seats. And so they have these companies that make trailers for them. They have rough them out. They have people watch them. They pick the top two, and they take those two and they put more energy, they begin to edit them. And then they test that and test audiences, not asking them, just have them watch it passively, see what their brain does. And then they take that final one, continue to edit it, and in particular, edit it so that there's a call to action at an immersion peak. So you can think of, in the story
Oh,
space, think of immersion like tension that you get from a story in your brain. And humans generally don't like tension, even though we do like stories. We like a little bit of tension. So if you put enough tension in and then give people a way to release that tension by doing something, then you actually can complete the loop and take this story and move it into influence. So,
wow.
what if, for listeners, watch our theatrical trailer. You can find them online. And what you'll see is that they're almost always half of a narrative arc. So they introduce the characters. There's a mystery. There's a crisis. Things start to get emotionally compelling, and then they hold it at the top. And that's smart, right? So now I don't want to complete the narrative arc. I want you to buy a ticket to find out what happens. And then that call to action, if it happens at immersion peak, it should see, you know, comes out March 6th, or click here, even better. Click here to buy a ticket now, buy an advanced ticket. That'd be smart, right? So if you're thinking about storytelling to influence rather than just to entertain, then you want to really craft that story so that you have that level of impact right when you want it. Don't close the narrative arc and then at the end go buy a ticket now when your
Yeah.
immersion is lower, because you've already let that tension dissipate. So this is kind of
That is gold.
can you believe it? It's wild. So I think for stuff that we've talked about, Kat, like long form storytelling, right? We
Yeah.
see the same thing where we see multiple storylines that vary the tension, because I'm always holding you
Mm,
at high tension. It's just exhausting, and then I need the break, and I don't want to read your book anymore.
right.
But if I have multiple storylines for long form entertainment or long form
Yeah.
storytelling, it lets me modulate that flow. So I have a little breather. And so again, this is,
Love it.
humans figure this out pre-measurement, which is fascinating to me, how smart the humans are.
Yeah.
But now with measurement, we can go a step further and ask, even though I may be a junior storyteller, or even maybe an experienced storyteller, I don't really know. I'm guessing from my own response that this is how to craft this.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
why not measure? And particularly when we're talking about stuff in which the impact really matters. You want a best-selling novel, or you've got $100 million sunk into this movie. Man, you better measure. I mean, don't guess. You got to measure.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Um, oh my gosh, there's so much there. Yes, and I think you just answered my next questions.
We're sharing a brain.
um,
That's great.
I think you might have posed this question somewhere in the stuff I was looking for, and so we can always skip it if it's kind of a goofy one. But what is the audience really getting out of stories? Is it what we think it is, or is there something else going on that we could be present or aware of?
I love that question. Yeah, why are we not tired of stories at this point, right? Isn't that a good question?
Yeah.
We've all read bazillions of books. I do a lot of my books on Audible, and I had to call them. I have 800 Audible books that I've read so far.
Wow.
Yeah. And then add all the physical books and movies.
Yes.
How is it possible that I'm still buying books?
Yes.
And part of that is what I said earlier, that familiarity added to novelty. So a spy story in a different setting, a movie in a different setting, whatever that thing is that my brain wants to learn about.
Yeah.
Um, the second is, and this is really interesting and explains the second half of the subtitle of my book, there is evidence that for people who have peak immersion experiences, you're stretching the brain to be able to be more present, more immersed in all kinds of experiences. So we're training ourselves to have these powerful emotional experiences that improve our satisfaction with life. We become happier and, by some measures, healthier humans because we're fully present. We're just all part of this experience. And we have to be trained to do that because the world's busy. There are lots of things going on. So if I can, again, use those three dimensions, get you ready for an experience, create amazing content, and deliver it really well, you're like, oh my gosh, like crying at movies, which of course I've never done, but I've heard that people do it. Like that's an amazing experience. That's real immersion, right? You've been immersed in
Yes.
this story, but then why is that pleasant to us? Or why would nature endow us with these abilities for a flickering image on a screen? Because we're such hypersocial creatures that now we
Mhm.
have had this experience of love or loss or whatever that movie is about or story is about. And we're experiencing those emotions. And the more we experience something, the easier it is to experience it. So we're training ourselves to
Yes.
be better emotional creatures, better social creatures, better parents, better spouses, better friends. And what happens is when I'm a great friend to you and you're a great friend to me, my quality of life goes up. My immune system improves. People live longer lives when they have better social relationships. So, story makes people happy and healthy. How about that as a punchline?
That is crazy. I mean, my brain is going all the way to like spirituality and like God and evolution and many lives. And yeah, just like there's just this like evolution happening through
Mm,
story.
right.
This elevation of the human experience, the human condition, humanity, whatever. Fascinating.
And when do we really get to have safe, powerful emotional experiences? Right? Safe because if there's a real human I'm having this with, he or she or they may hurt me if I'm vulnerable, right? If I'm crying, if I'm joyful, that means you've gotten into me in some sense, right? And that's scary. But if I have it in a story, I can flex these neurologic muscles, if
Right.
you will, in a safe way, and then learn to modulate this. So we see this in our children. I see this in my teenage children, where they're really trying out a lot of things, but it's very scary. And even as an adult or even older adult, it's great to have an experience. You know, when someone calls you on the phone or on the Zoom and they tell you they love you, and you're like, oh my gosh, like a friend, not a family member, but like,
Yeah.
I love you too. And it's such a nice thing to have a friend,
Yeah.
even for me, like a guy friend, like a close guy friend, go like,
Yeah.
Paul, I love you. I'm like, I love you too, buddy. Man, you're awesome.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that was that made me feel so good, made me feel so connected, made me feel so human. So I think stories are about love ultimately. They're about
Yeah.
sharing the emotion and having people have these experiences of love and loss and fear, and then getting to the other side and go, okay, I got something out of this. Something valuable happened to me, and it can
Mm.
happen to me again, and maybe I allow that to happen.
I love this conversation. I did not plan for us to go here because I'm like, I'm yes, story transformation. Like I'm experiencing, I'm feeling it, I'm hearing it. What I'm hearing from you is story transcendence.
I love
And
that.
yeah, so cool, so beautiful. Love it, Paul. I think I don't know. Maybe I should just stop there. We might be at time. I feel like that's just too juicy. I have to stop there. I just need to
Yeah.
that's the peak. And so now we close the loop with read the book, learn more about it, and
be
yeah, just
proud
like
as
my
storytellers, right?
yeah.
You're doing this amazing work that serves humans in the most important and fundamental way. Yes, story all the time, right? With your
Yeah.
children, with your friends, with your spouse. Share that story, write that story down, create that experience. It's just absolutely valuable and is life changing, literally life changing.
Yeah. And even when I think about business, I mean, isn't the business more human? Isn't the um s- the business client relationship more beautiful when we see it in those terms of
Absolutely.
story and touching
And the employees too, when they understand
yes.
that they are creating a transformative experience, even if I'm just selling you popcorn at the theater,
Yeah.
that can be transformative. To see someone who loves their job so much and they're just creating joy in the world, that's a little mini story, right? And
Yes.
you want to go, wow, you love doing this. Talk to those people. They have a story too, and they're giving you that joy. So, ask them where that joy came from. You're
Mm.
serving my dinner and you love this job. How come? How
I
much?
love that. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kat. I don't know how we got here, but it was awesome.
I love chatting with you. I really, really do. Is there anything else you want to add before we leave for today?
Lots of insights in the book. So it just came out. So if people are interested, Immersion, the Science of the Extraordinary and the Source of Happiness. What's more important than the extraordinary, right? I don't want
Ah,
ordinary. I want you
yes.
to blow my mind. And so
Yes.
this talk with you has really blown my mind. Thank you,
Uh,
Kat, for your interest and your wonderful questions.
Thank you, Paul. Just a total joy. Every time I chat with you is just pure joy. So thank you so much for being here. Everybody, stay tuned. We have a Power of Story workshop coming up on October 24th. Have more amazing, fascinating interviews on the Power of Story coming up. So stay tuned and we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Bye.